Okay, my friends, we are live. Give me 1 second to share this. And then we're going to get to learn. In the meantime, I hope you're downloading the source sheet. You have it on Facebook, you have it on YouTube in the video description. We're going to use that to study from today. And we're almost ready to start. If you can let me know that you hear me so that sound is good. We will begin. Just 1 second, sharing this. Oh, come on. Let's go. No, luck. Here we go. There we go. All right, I think we successfully did that. Okay, so good evening, everyone. And tonight we're going to learn a truly outlandish story with a very outstanding lesson. And the story and the lesson really revolve around a very great rabbi, a great sage from the Talmud, whose name is Rabbi Meir. So what I want to do also to make sure that you can appreciate the background to this story is perhaps provide a brief biographical sketch about Rabbi Meir, so you can get to understand who he was and appreciate his qualities, which will make the story even more richer than it is on its own. Who was Rabbi Meir? Rabbi Meir lived in the 2nd century. This is during the times of the Mishnah, so about a century or half a century after the destruction of the temple. Many Jews have already been exiled. Rabbi Meir is living in Israel at the time. And he lived a short life. He was one of the greatest sages of his time, or of all time, we could say. He's probably mentioned one of the most in the Mishnah. So the Mishnah being the compilation of the teachings of the Tanaim, the Tanaitic sages. Rabbi Meir was a Tana. And that closes in about the year 180 after the Common Era by Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, who we spoke about in previous weeks. And then begins the era of the Amoraim, which is the few centuries of the sages, the Amoras, who explained the Mishnah and created the Talmud. Rabbi Meir is, apparently the Talmud says he has an interesting ancestry, because one of his great-great-great-grandparents was a Roman. Was in fact, as the Gemara calls him, Neron Caesar, Nero Caesar, who was an emperor of Rome and was also the one that was appointed to be oversee the destruction of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple and the Jewish people. And the story goes that he makes his way to Jerusalem, and he wants to, in those days, even those wicked people were very, not superstitious, they were actually very faithful. They knew about God and the force and the power of God, and they knew that they have to be careful playing with fire. So first, the story goes that he shoots 4 arrows in 4 different directions, north, south, east, and west, and miraculously all the arrows land in the same place in Jerusalem. He takes that as a sign that God is blessing him and his army to destroy Jerusalem. But he's not satisfied with that. So he then goes to a child, and he asks the child, Psok li psukech, tell me what you learned in Cheder, in school today. And there's this concept that there could be some kind of prophetic by divine providence kind of occurrence here, that when you ask a child what they learned and they tell you the Torah they learned, it could be a lesson for you at that moment. And the child recited a verse from scripture that indicated to Neron Caesar that whilst he may have the permission from God to go ahead and destroy the temple and the Jewish people, but whoever does that, and it says the word Edom, those that are descendants of Edom, they will be severely punished by God as well. So Neron Caesar realizes that whoever's going to do this mission of God and destroy the Jewish people will be extremely heavily punished by God. He's afraid of that. He doesn't want that. So he says, I'm dropping this whole thing. And he runs away. And tradition has it that he, in fact, converts. That's what the Talmud says. And Yatsa Mimena Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir is a descendant of this great convert who gave up on destroying the Jewish people. Rabbi Meir is the student of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, also one of the greatest sages we've had, and Rabbi Akiva was brutally murdered by the Romans. He's one of the 10 martyrs. And Rabbi Meir sees this. He's in attendance, seeing his own master and teacher his flesh being forked and peeled away as he's being butchered and murdered. Rabbi Meir is also the son-in-law of Rabbi Chanina, the son of Tradion. Rabbi Chanina, the son of Tradion, was another one of the 10 martyrs who was terribly killed, as we learned, I believe, in 2 weeks ago, or 2 classes ago. He was burned at the stake in a very brutal way. He was his son-in-law. So Rabbi Meir is living during a very difficult time where many Jewish people are being persecuted and some of the great ones are being killed. And other massacres happened during that time by the Romans as well. So this is some of the background about when he's living. Now, he has a very famous wife. His wife is Bruria, one of the few women who are mentioned in the Talmud. There weren't a lot of women sages in the Talmud, but Bruria has many stories and many teachings that she gave, and sadly, it seems she died a very tragic death. We're not going to go into that now. Rabbi Meir was brilliant. It is told that he once arrived in a city before Purim, and they didn't have any Megillah scroll through which to read the Megillah. So they told us to Rabbi Meir, what should we do? He sat down the afternoon before Purim, and he wrote by hand, by heart, the entire Megillah, so they could read from a scroll. That was Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir was very, very kind. He was a great leader. Story goes as follows. There was a woman, this is all introduction. This is not the main story for tonight. There was a woman who, it says, never missed a class of Rabbi Meir. Her husband wasn't so happy she left the home every night or whenever, but she wanted to learn. But one night, the class seemed to have gone on for a very long time, and she didn't come home until very late. And the husband was terribly angry at her. And he told her, I'm so upset you came home so late. I was waiting for you. So now I'm not going to forgive you until you go and spit Rabbi Meir in the eye. Well, she refused to do that, of course. So she left the house. She got separated. She said, I wish I could be married to you, but I'm not going to spit Rabbi Meir in the eye. For a short while, she was living away from her husband. Rabbi Meir caught wind of what was happening. They told him about this ultimatum that the husband made. So Rabbi Meir came to her once, and he told her, I have this sore, this ailment in my eye, and I'm being told by a doctor someone needs to spit human saliva, spit in my eye, and then it's going to be healed. Which she did because he asked her to, and she didn't know, or she then later realized the trick he was playing, and the husband welcomed her back. Rabbi Meir was profound. His name, Meir, means to illuminate. Meir, his teachings, his ideas were so fresh, were so creative, were so deep, were so illuminating. It is told that whenever a question arose in the study hall, he could provide 150 reasons to purify this thing, and then another, and then counter with 150 reasons to explain why this thing is impure. And he was so complex and comprehensive that in fact everyone had a hard time understanding, so what does Rabbi Meir really say? Because he had developed and expressed so many layers of ideas. In fact, therefore, oftentimes the halacha, the law, was not ruled in his opinion because people had a hard time understanding him because of his great brilliance. He has many wonderful teachings. We're not going to go into now because we didn't have a lot of time, but maybe we'll do another session because Rabbi Meir is deserving of a lot of time. One thing I will mention for now before we begin is that many times in the Mishnah, Rabbi Meir is not referred to by his name, but rather by a code name. And the code name is Acherim, the others. So for example, in the Mishnah, whenever you have one opinion by a particular rabbi, and then it says Acherim Oimrim, but others say, who's the others? The others refers to Rabbi Meir. Why wasn't he mentioned by name? Why is he referred to as Acherim, the others? And there are multiple explanations for that. One reason that's suggested is because there was some politics in the academy. There were different positions. There was the Nasi, the president, and the Rosh Yeshiva, and then there was the Chacham. Rabbi Meir was the Chacham. And there was a situation where Rabbi Meir and his colleague were very unimpressed by what the president was doing, and they tried to exercise some of their power. It didn't work. It's not such a pleasant story. And in the end, Rabbi Meir left the Sanhedrin, the academy of that time. But they wanted to include his rulings in the Mishnah because they were so beautiful and brilliant. But they didn't want to refer to him by name, not to shame the president of the academy. So they referred to him as Acher, the others. But everybody knew when he said others, it means Rabbi Meir. Another suggestion is that he was also a student of another great sage, or someone who used to be a great sage. His name is Rabbi Elisha ben Avuya. Elisha ben Avuya was a great Talmudic sage. He's one of the 4 great rabbis who the Gemara says entered into the Pardes, went into the spiritual orchard. They took a journey in the heavens. Not all of them fared that well on that journey. In fact, Elisha ben Avuya became an apostate. He gave up on God. He gave up on the Torah. But Rabbi Meir knew that Elisha, his teacher, has so much to teach him. So he remained as a student of his, even though he had become an apostate. And the story goes that on Shabbat, Elisha ben Avuya, the sage, would be riding his horse, which we weren't allowed to do on Shabbat, and be riding outside the Eruv, which you also weren't allowed to do on Shabbat. And Rabbi Meir would be walking alongside his teacher, walking, which you can do on Shabbat, walking inside the Eruv, which you can do on Shabbat, and he'd be learning from his teacher who was violating Shabbat as he's talking to him. And many of his time were unimpressed of his continued relationship with his teacher. In fact, there's a story recorded in the Talmud where Rabbi Meir Rabbah, the son of Shila, a different Meir, asked Elijah the prophet, "What is God doing right now in heaven?" Elijah responded, "He's teaching novel Torah insights, but he's not teaching anything from Rabbi Meir." "Why not?" he asked. "Because Rabbi Meir studied Torah from Elisha ben Avuya, and we're disappointed in his behavior." So Rabbah responded, "Rabbi Meir found a pomegranate. He ate its fruit and threw out its peel. He knew how to distill. He knew how to extract the emes, the truth, from no matter who teaches the truth, and he knew how to leave aside the negative aspects of the life of this apostate." When he heard that, he said, Elijah said, "Now the Almighty, blessed be He, also quotes the novel Torah insights of Rabbi Meir with actually extra particular fondness, realizing the qualities of Rabbi Meir." Now, his teacher, Elisha ben Avuya, when he became an apostate, he was referred to as Acher, the other one, Acher, the outcast. He was no longer respected by the Jewish community. Rabbi Meir, being the student of Acher, is referred to in the Mishnah as Acherim, the others say. That's a second suggestion. There is a third suggestion, and that actually comes from the story, the text we're going to be learning from today. So let's study that story, and I hope I'm going to remember to point out the third suggestion of why he is called Acher. So I hope you have your source sheet in front of you. We have 3 stories we're going to try to cover, one main story and then 2 other stories to help us explain better this story. And we're talking about the prayer that will always save you, which is a very interesting, enigmatic title, but as you'll see, there is something very outlandish and outstanding over here. Story number 1, quote number 1, it's from Talmud, Avodah Zarah, page 18a, and it goes to side B as well, and it is as follows. Bruria, the wife of Rabbi Meir. We mentioned Bruria, his wife, very famous woman. She was a daughter of Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion. As we mentioned, Rabbi Meir was his son-in-law. He had a couple daughters. So here's some background. One daughter was Bruria, married to Rabbi Meir. Another daughter, here's what happened to her. When Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion was being punished by the Romans, so they ruled as follows. Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion is going to be burnt at the stake. His wife is going to be killed. And the daughter is going to be sentenced to a life in the brothel, a life as a harlot, like a sex slave for the Romans. Now, why they were all being punished is a separate story, but now that's an introduction to now what we're going to learn. So Bruria said to Rabbi Meir, "It's a disrespectful matter for me that my sister is sitting in a brothel. You must do something to save her." Rabbi Meir took a vessel. In the Talmud, it's the word a tarkava, full of gold dinars, and went. And he said to himself as follows: "If no transgression was committed with her, a miracle will be performed for her. If she committed a transgression, no miracle will be performed for her." It's a little... So he was basically saying, I'm going to try to save her, but she needs her own merits to be saved also. Now, a lot of commentaries are quick to interrupt over here and to say, well, even if she did commit an act of transgression in the brothel, she was a slave. Wasn't by her own fault or anything that she's there, so why would she not be deserving or with the merits for salvation, or perhaps once you become that slave and you're forced and coerced into something, but then it grows on you and then it becomes willing, and it's something we need to explore further. In any event, that is how Rabbi Meir, the deal that he struck with himself when he went to save her. Rabbi Meir went and he dressed as a Roman knight. And he said to her, accede to my wishes. In other words, sleep with me. He acted as a regular Roman. So she, Rabbi Chanina ben Tradon's daughter, said, I can't. I'm menstruating. So I can't do that right now. So he said to her, I'll wait for you. I'll come back soon. She said, there are many other women in the brothel, and there are many other women who are more beautiful than I am. Go and find another woman. You'll have a much more pleasurable time. After all these excuses that she's giving, Rabbi Meir said, I can conclude from her responses that she did not commit a transgression, and she probably gives the same excuses to everybody who comes to her, visit her in the brothel. So now he realizes she has the merit of being saved, and now he's going to make the miracle, or save her. He went over to her guard, and he said to him, give her to me. I want to take her home. The guard said to him, I can't give her to you. I fear that if I do so, I'm going to be punished by the government. So the mayor said to him, here, take this vessel full of gold coins, gold dinars. You can give half to the government as a bribe. If they're going to come and ask you questions, you bribe them. And the rest, the other half, you can keep for yourself. You'll become a rich man. Build a new life for yourself. The guard asked Rabbi Meir, but when the money is finished, well, what am I going to do? I can't bribe forever with this limited pot of money, even though it was a lot of money. So Rabbi Meir said, listen carefully. This is the punchline. This is what you should say to the guards if they start to harass you. You say in Hebrew, you say, Elokah de Meir aneni. God of Meir, answer me. And you will be saved. Just say those words, and you'll be saved. The guard said to him, and who says that this is true? How do I know I can trust that this is actually going to work? It sounds very outlandish. Why would a phrase like that save me? So Mary said to him, I'll show you. You'll see now. There were carnivorous dogs that would devour people. Rameir took a clod of earth, threw it at them to excite them or to irritate them. And then they came running to devour Rabbi Meir with all of their dog ferociousness. And Rabbi Meir called out, Elokah de Meir aneni, God of Meir, answer me. And then the dogs left him alone. A miracle. His life was saved. After seeing this, the guard gave the daughter to Rabbi Chanina ben Tradon, the daughter of Rabbi Chanina ben Tradon, to Rabbi Meir, you can take her home. I know that I have the money to bribe the guards, and then I have the miracle formula that will help save me if I ever need. That's the end of that part of the story. Now, ultimately, the matter was heard in the king's court because she went missing. And I guess he tried to bribe them as much as he could, whether it worked or it didn't work. But at some point they said, that's it. You need to be punished for giving away one of the slaves, which you weren't authorized to do so. So the guard was being brought and being taken to be hanged. He was going to be killed. As they have the noose around his neck and they're about to pull the floor from beneath him and let him hang to death, he calls out, he remembers the words, Elokah de Meir aneni, God of Meir, answer me. Then they lowered him down, but they were unable to hang him. Whether it's because the noose kept breaking, whether it's because the floor beneath him didn't pull away, or whatever. Something happened. No matter how many times they tried, he could not be hanged. So they took him down and they said to him, what is this? What did you say there? It seems like you had some magical, miraculous powers. So he told them, this was the incident that occurred, and he proceeded to relate the entire story to them. Told them the story of Rabbi Meir who came. They got very disappointed with Rabbi Meir. We got to catch this guy. Look what he's doing to our country, to our slaves, to our guards. So they went and they engraved the image of Rabbi Meir at the entrance of Rome, where it would be seen by everyone. So they make a big picture. Anyone who sees this guy, tell us where he is. Wanted, Rabbi Meir. Now, by the way, it says the entrance of Rome, but Rabbi Meir, like I said, did not live in Rome at the time. He lived in Israel. So apparently there was a city that the Romans had named in Israel called Romi, as it's brought down in the Talmud. And that was the city in Israel where they felt is most possible people will see the image and identify Rabbi Meir. Anyone who sees a man with his face should bring him here. One day, Romans saw Rabbi Meir, and they began to run after him. And he ran away from them. Now, how's he going to save himself? So he entered a brothel. Now, how did that save him? So there's two interpretations, two traditions about this story. Some say he escaped because he saw that there was food cooked by Gentiles. So the law is that if a Gentile, an idolater, cooks your food, you can't eat that food. We were concerned maybe they're not going to put something not kosher in it. They can't be relied upon for kosher food. So it's called bishul akum, the cooked food of an idolater. So there was food cooked by the Gentiles, and Rabbi Meir dips one finger into the food, but then he licks the other finger, and he shows them, hey, I'm eating the food, but really it was a trick because he's licking his other finger. And thereby they fooled them into thinking that he was eating their food, which they knew Rabbi Meir would never do. If this person over here is eating this food of the idolater, for sure it can't be Rabbi Meir. So they ran to get him, but then they realized, wrong guy, and they left. That's one interpretation, one tradition of the story. Another tradition is that he escaped detection because Elijah the prophet, who we know, we spoke about this last week, Elijah sometimes comes down. He comes down to this world, obviously at every Brit Milah circumcision. He comes down on many other occasions. He comes to your Pesach Seder every year. We welcome him when you open the door. But sometimes he comes down even soul in body and to actually save and help people in different ways. So here he came down in the body of a woman who was dressed up as one of the harlots in the brothel. And so he appeared to them as a prostitute, and he ran over to embrace Rabbi Meir and caress him and welcome him like one of the, as a client of one of the ladies there. And the Romans who were chasing him said, heaven forbid, if this were Rabbi Meir, he would never act in that manner. So once again, they were fooled, he deceived them, and he was saved, and they left without catching him. At that point, even though his life was saved, but he knew his life is still being threatened, so he arose, he fled, and he arrived in Babylon. It's at that point when he leaves Israel, and he travels to Babylon, because it was too dangerous for him to live in Israel anymore. He moved back and forth. If you follow the Talmud, there's episodes where he comes back to Israel when his life is a little safer and the Roman sort of rule changes a little bit. He was back and forth, but for most of the beginning part of his life, he lived in Israel, and then later he moves to Babylon after the story. And there's other reasons why he moved to Babylon as well, something with his wife we're not going to get into now. That's a cool story, right? So what are we taking away from this story? Story is, it's telling us that you can use this powerful prayer, like a magical prayer, and you can say, Elokad Meir Aneni, God of Meir, save me, and it'll work. You'll be saved. It's going to help you. By the way, two interesting points about the actual story itself. One is that if you notice, when Rabbi Meir his life was being threatened, when he was being pursued, he didn't say Elokad Meir Aneni. He could have done that. He would have been saved. No, he runs into the brothel and he hides, and then he does the whole trick with the cooked food, one finger, the other finger, or Elijah the prophet comes and saves him. Why didn't he use his own formula? Elokad Meir Aneni. So that's a question some commentaries ask. Maybe he didn't want to use his own name. He was too humble to say that the prayer of God of Meir answer me, which is talking about himself, should work for himself. He was too humble to use that prayer about himself. The other point, which is a very important point, is when he went to save his sister-in-law, he brought a vessel of gold coins for the guard. And he tells the guard, here, half you have to bribe them. If that runs out, then you can use this prayer, it's going to save you. If this prayer saves you, then why do you have to bring the gold coins at all? Just use the prayer from the outset. Anytime you're feeling threatened, use the prayer. Apparently, the prayer is a miracle. And what the miracle is, we're going to have to understand. I'm going to try to explain it to you. But before you get to miracles in life, before you pray for miracles, you first have to exhaust your natural resources, natural possibilities, how to get out of a situation. You're in a situation, it's very tempting when you're stuck and it's something very difficult, very challenging, almost looks like it's out of your control. You're feeling stressed, you're feeling distressed, you're feeling like this is the end, I'm reaching rock bottom, I'll never, whatever the issue that you're going through is, it's very tempting to sit back, fold your hands and say, I'm praying for a miracle. We always love to pray for miracles. I hope I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and it's all going to be over. I'm going to be a different person. They're going to be a different person. Everything will be changed with a snap of a finger. We love miracles. That's not how God likes it. Don't rely on miracles, at least in the beginning. You have to first try to exercise every single effort, resources, ideas that come to mind, how you can fix your situation. Once you've exhausted all of those, then you can say, God, I've done all I can, and now I'm praying to you. Please help me out of here in a way that only you can do and that I can't. That's a very important and powerful lesson from the way that Rabbi Meir behaved with the guy. Now, from this story, it became a tradition, a custom, that people could use the power of this prayer. Let me just read this comment. This is the same reason I've learned Avram insisted on paying for the Kei Napel as well. Couldn't rely on miracles. He had to make sure it would be his. Yes, that's a very good point. Also, in general, just to add to your point, Jordan, is that we don't like to take things for free. There's even an expression, Soneh matanot yichyeh. It's a verse. Those who hate gifts live a long life. The problem with a gift is that we hope that the giver of the gift is going to be, unconditionally loving. But very often there are strings attached. The string may not be money because it's a gift, but there are other strings. You owe me one, that kind of thing. Abraham did not want ever that Ephron or anyone else should be able to say, we gave you the Kei Machpelah, really it's ours, we gave it to you, now we want it back, or we want to have some kind of control. We don't like, gifts always have strings attached, unfortunately. I'm going to pay top dollar, and you go in your way, I'll go in my way, and I'll be the full boss of this. That's another idea over there. So from here came this whole concept that we can make this prayer, Elokah de Meir Aneni, the Lord, the God of Meir, answer me, and it works. It's a very fascinating thing. More specifically, this tradition evolved into not just randomly making the prayer, but connecting the prayer with a particular mitzvah, the performance of a good deed, and in particular, giving tzedakah, giving charity. So you may have heard that you give some charity, and whilst you give the charity, you say, Elokah de Meir Aneni, and then your prayer will be heard from God and answered. In fact, where should you give the charity to? So the custom has become to give a charity, to give tzedakah to a charity called Kupas Rabbi Meir Baal Hanes. Give charity to the Rabbi Meir Baal Hanes cause. He's known as Rabbi Meir Baal Hanes, Rabbi Meir, the master of miracles. As we've seen, he could perform this miracle and many other miracles. And their funds were created that were called Rabbi Meir Baal Hanes funds. Most typically, these funds were created to support poor people in Israel. So the earliest one of these, in fact, goes back to the year 1788, where the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, Rebbe Shnezalman of the Adi, established what was called Kolel Chabad. And Kolel Chabad was a program that their goal was to support the poor people living in Israel. And at that time, there were many people making Aliyah. That was a group of great rabbis, but also others who were making Aliyah and moving to Israel, many of them without a penny to their name. So the Alter Rebbe used to collect a lot of funds to send over to Israel, which is why, by the way, the Russians ended up arresting him and wanting to kill him because they claimed he was supporting the Turks against the Russians, even though that wasn't true. He was just supporting the Jewish people in Israel. So that fund was called Rabbi Meir Baal Hanes Fund. And this, by the way, exists till today, the Kolel Chabad. If you're familiar with the Kotel, you turn around from the Kotel, you see this big building called Kolel Chabad. It happens to be a soup kitchen. It's a soup kitchen that doesn't only provide food there, but it sends food gifts and all kinds of assistance to many poor people all over Jerusalem, but all over the country as well. Many of you have done pantry packers and other things. It's all tied together with Kol Chabad. And that's a fund in the name of Rabbi Meir Baal Hanes. By the way, ever since then, there's been other funds as well. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter and others created similar funds, all with the same intention. So the custom became that you give charity to a fund of Rabbi Meir Baal Hanes to support the poor people in Israel. And you say, Elokad de Meir Aneni, and whatever is going on will be answered. Some say that you don't have to dedicate it to such a fund. You can give it to another charity cause, but that's ideal. Why? Where does this tzedakah aspect come into the whole prayer of Rabbi Meir? So I want to draw your attention to the next story. It's on side 2, story number 2 from the Baba Batra, page 10a. Listen to this story. Rabbi Meir would say, an opponent may bring an argument against you and say, if your God loves the poor, for what reason does he not support them himself? If God wants the poor person to have money, then God will give him money. He won't create him poor. He provide him with sustenance. It's this argument that we hear a lot. If a person is created poor or is poor, that's God's way of saying, I want him to be poor right now. Like, chas v'shalom, imagine saying, if somebody's sick, don't pray for them to get better. Don't take them to a hospital. Don't give them medicine. It's God's way of saying they should be sick now. So by trying to heal them, are you violating the will of God? Are you arguing and feeling like you're cleverer than God? And here someone may argue with you, don't give charity to the poor person. God wants them to be poor right now. So the mayor said, in such a case, you respond as follows. God commands us to act as his agents in sustaining the poor, so that through them we will be saved from the judgment of Gehenna. God creates a poor person to give you, the wealthier person, the opportunity to support them, to do a mitzvah. God wants to create a society of give and take. If everybody had what they needed, there'd be no give, there'd be no take, and it'd be a terrible society, by the way. It's like the Mishnah says, one who says, mine is mine and yours is yours, what's so bad about that? I'll keep my stuff, you keep your stuff. So the Mishnah says that is a midah, that's a characteristic of Sodom. Sodom were known to be the most evil, corrupt people. And why is that Sodom? Because you're creating a society where I don't give to you, I don't take from you, I have nothing to do with you, I separate myself from you, and there's no interconnectedness between each other, and that leads to a very cruel, a very vicious, a very non-empathetic society, which is, we never want it to be that way. Everything has to be about give and take. Some can give more and some take more. And God wants it to be that way. So he creates the poor person so that the other person can do the mitzvah, give them charity, and then they can receive the merits for that as well. Now, that's Rabbi Meir's teaching. The Talmud continues, this is actually the question that Turnus Rufus the Wicked asked Rabbi Akiva. So there's many discussions between Turnus Rufus and Rabbi Akiva. Turnus Rufus was a Roman sage, a Roman chacham, a Roman scholar, perhaps even some kind of emperor or military dignitary as well. And he was very philosophical, and he had a lot of questions and a lot of disagreements with the Torah. And so there's a lot of conversations. So here is one issue that he had with Rabbi Akiva. He said the same thing. Your God loves the poor. For what reason does he not support them himself? Rabbi Akiva said to him, he commands us to sustain the poor so that through them and the charity we give them will be saved from the judgment of Gehenna. It's a way for us who can provide them to do a mitzvah, the mitzvah of giving. They take and we give, and then we earn a merit that way. Turnus Rufus counted back to Rabbi Akiva. On the contrary, it's this charity which condemns you, the Jewish people, to Gehenna, to punishment in heaven, because you give it. Not that this act of giving should protect you, but it should stand against you. How so? I'll illustrate this to you with a parable, he said. So what is this matter comparable? It's comparable to a king of flesh and blood, a human king, who was angry with his slave, and he put him in prison. And he ordered to all the other subjects that this slave in prison should not be fed or given to drink. Now, one subject in the palace felt bad for this guy. He's starving to death. He went ahead and he fed him and gave him to drink. Now, imagine if the king heard about this. Would he not be angry at that person? He ordered not to do so. And you, he says to Rabbi Akiva, after all, you people are called slaves, as it says, for the children of Israel are slaves to me, avadaihem, not really slaves, probably servants, or there's another word that's better, but we are the avadim to God. And now if God makes a person poor, and he decrees that that person should be impoverished, then you have no right to go ahead and feed and drink that person if God has instructed that that person should be poor. That was the argument that Turnus Rufus raised against Rabbi Akiva. Don't do what God is asking you not to do, like the king would be angry with that person that feeds the slave. Akiva answered back to Turnus Rufus. Very, very clever answer. He said, I'll illustrate you with an opposite parable, a different parable. To what is the matter comparable? Comparable to a king of flesh and blood, who was angry with his son and put him in prison, and ordered that he should not be fed or given to drink. Not a slave, but his own child. One person went ahead and fed him and gave him to drink. Now, if the king heard about what this stranger does, what this subject does, what would be the king's reaction? Would he not react by sending that person a gift? When a king subjects their own child to starve to death, maybe they were in a moment of rage, of anger, and they punish the child, but once they wake up the next morning, you think they really want to starve their own child? Heaven forbid. And so they maybe can't go against their word anymore the way it worked in those days. The king gave his word, even if it's his own child, he can't change. But he's hoping and praying, how happy would he be if the subject would disobey the law and go ahead and feed it, give the child to eat and drink. The king would give the person a gift. Thank you for saving my son when I couldn't save my son. So Rabbi Akiva responded that we're all called the sons, the children of God. It is written, you are the sons of the Lord your God. Banim atem lashem alekechem. You're not the sons, you're the children. It's not the gender aspect. You're all the children of God. So we're the children, of course, God wants that those that can provide to the other should give to the other. Even though God created one person poor, everyone else who can should provide that person. So Turnus Rufus enjoyed that response, but he said it's not as simple as that. It's a little complex. You see, you guys in scripture are called sons, you're called children, but you're also called slaves, servants. When you fulfill the will of the God of the omnipresent, you're called children. And when you do not fulfill the will of the omnipresent, you're called servants. So Turnus Rufus sort of has the last say of it here. Even though the argument of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Meir earlier said, of course, God wants the wealthy to provide for the poor, but Turnus Rufus had this parable that the king would be angry if he violated what he instructed, and only if it's a child would he be happy at the end, but if it's a servant, he wouldn't be. And children, we the Jewish people are sometimes called children, sometimes called servants. It depends. If God's in a good mood because we are behaving and doing as we should, we're called children, but if we're not, we're called servants. You know, on Yom Kippur, on Rosh Hashanah, during the Musaf prayer, we blow the shofar and then we sing the song, Areshet Sifatenu, and we say, Im kevanim, im kavadim, which means, if we're like children, if we're like servants, and we say, no matter God, how you consider us, please save us, please help us. But it comes out in the conclusion of this story that it's not so simple. Meaning if we're not fulfilling the will of God and therefore we have the status of servants, then based on this parable, do the wealthy have the right to provide for the poor? Like in the parable, what would the king think if you disobeyed his order and you fed that person in prison? That's the way Rabbi Akiva had the conversation. But now there's a passage in the Talmud in Kiddushin 36a that expresses the opinion of our Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir feels very differently from Rabbi Akiva and from Turnus Rufus. Rabbi Meir says it's a very famous teaching. In Hebrew, it's bein kach u bein kach. No matter if you behave like this or if you behave like that. No matter if you're fulfilling the will of God or you're, heaven forbid, not fulfilling the will of God. Either way, you are always called children to God. You're always a child. Sometimes a well-behaved child. Sometimes a not so well-behaved child. But you always have the status of a child. And he brings many verses to support this view. So one verse in Yirmiyahu and Jeremiah says, you're considered foolish sons. So you're foolish, but you're still a son. And then it says in Devarim, it says, sons in whom there is no faithfulness. Or it says, the seed of evildoers, children who deal corruptly. You may have no faithfulness, you may be full of corruption, but you're still the child of God, no matter what you're doing. And then it says in the passage in Hosea, in Hosea, it says, and it shall come to pass that instead of what was said to them, you are not my people, it shall be said to them, children of the living God. God will never, like a parent will never banish a child. Sometimes you have to deal harshly with the child. Sometimes you need to have a child live outside of the house if their presence in the home is unhealthy. But they're always a child. You have to always stay a child. You have to always love them, even if you want to reprimand them or discipline them, or even if you disapprove of their choices, you have to still love them. Right? There's a famous commentary. We know that Abraham expels Hagar and her son Ishmael from his house. Sarah was very disappointed in this child, Ishmael, who was a wild child, the bad influence on her son Yitzchak. So she asked her husband, you have to send them out of the house, which he does. He sends them out of the house, and Ishmael is a 13, 14-year-old boy, and Yitzchak is a young child, or maybe a little older. A little while later, the Torah tells us that when Avram is taking his son Yitzchak, who at that point is 37 years old, and is being told to take him up on the mountain for the binding of Isaac, for the story of the Akedah, make a slaughter out of him, it says that Avram took Na'arim, he took some lads, some other people with him to accompany them on the journey. Who did he take with him? He took Ishmael. Ishmael was banished from his house maybe 30, 40, 45 years earlier. There was no email. There was no Facebook. There was no mail, probably. Not even snail mail. How on earth did Avram locate Ishmael? Ishmael was gone. History, 40 years earlier. Where did he find Ishmael to take him along this journey? And so the answer given is, Avram never stopped communicating with Ishmael, even though he banished him from the home. That's what his wife Sarah wanted. But he was still his child. And even though he could no longer be in the home because of his negative influence, he still kept in touch with him. No matter where he went, they made sure they knew about each other and where each other, and they cared. He cared about him. So much so that when he needed him, he knew where to find him. And Ishmael came, which means Ishmael had a good relationship with him, and he came to accompany his father Abraham. That's a very powerful lesson. So Rabbi Meir says, we are always the children of God. If we're always the children of God, then when it comes to the parable of tzedakah, of charity, that Turnus Rufus tried to challenge against Rabbi Akiva, the answer according to Rabbi Meir is that there's never a problem to give charity to a poor person. In fact, God will always be thankful to anybody who donates charity to a poor person or to a needy cause, because even though for whatever reason God has decided this person or this cause should be needy, but thank you for having the sensitivity, thank you for having the love and the care and the interest and the generous heart to support your own brother and sister. It's always a merit. That's according to Rabbi Meir's opinion. So Rabbi Meir is the one that tells us that it's always important to give tzedakah, to give charity at all times to anybody who needs. Therefore, this mitzvah became synonymous with the mitzvah that you do when you want to make the prayer. You need Rabbi Meir's assistance. You're in a time of need. You say, Elokad, the Meir, Aneni, God of Meir, answer me. And because of the holy brilliance of Rabbi Meir and the prayers and his prayers for you, you will be saved. It is brought down in Shar HaGilgulim in a very important Kabbalistic work. When Rabbi Meir wanted to be buried, he asked to be buried after he passed away, standing up, which is very strange. We normally bury a person lying down in the ground, but he wanted to be standing up. And why? The commentaries say because of the standing up is the posture of praying. Rabbi Meir said, even though I've passed away, I will always continue to pray for my children and for those that need my prayers, even after I've passed. Right now he's in a standing posture, praying for those that need the prayers. And so, the Baal Shem Tov taught, it's brought down in the Kesser Shem Tov Paragraph 388. I'm going to read it as follows. Listen carefully. I have some good stories to finish us off. The Baal Shem Tov said, if a person comes to a dangerous encounter and he needs God's miracle to save him, he should donate 18, something in the number of $18, thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, whatever you want, but 18, towards, here he says actually, towards candles in the synagogue. Today we have lights, but it was always a very big honor for those who donated the candles that illuminated the synagogue. We mentioned this in our prayers on Shabbat. Today, by the way, you can still do this if you want to pay the electricity bill of the synagogue, which powers the lights. I know many synagogues that people offer to pay the electricity bill. So you donate towards the synagogue and you say as follows, I am donating these funds towards the candles in the merit of the soul of Rabbi Meir Baal Hanes, Rabbi Meir, the miracle worker, Elokad Meir Aneni, Elokad Meir Aneni, Elokad Meir Aneni, 3 times. God of Meir, save me, God of Meir, save me, God of Meir, save me. And then he concludes this prayer, God, please listen to me and perform wonders for me like you performed for Rabbi Meir. That's the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, which many others have expressed and taught as well. In fact, therefore, the following tradition has interestingly come about, and you may have heard of this. In particular, when you have a lost item, you lost something, you can't find it. You lost your phone, you lost your wallet, you lost your earring, you lost your diamond ring, whatever you lost. When you lose something, and first you have to look, okay? First you have to always try to go by and, be a mensch. Look, retrace your steps. Is it in your car? Is it in your bag? Is it in your office? You can look a little bit, then you'll find it. But let's say you've looked a lot. You've exhausted what you think are all the possibilities, and you can't find it, and it's very precious, and you need it. Then you give charity to Rabbi Meir Baal Hanes fund, and you say, Elokad Meir Aneni, Elokad Meir Aneni, Elokad Meir Aneni 3 times. Or there's a custom to recite a longer version. The longer version goes like this. I'll read it out. I have it in English. The longer version is, Rabbi Binyamin said, all are presumed blind until the Holy One, blessed be He, enlightens their eyes. We know this from the verse about Hagar, mother of Ishmael, which is the story that we mentioned earlier, that God opened her eyes and she went and filled up the water skin. What happened in the Torah was that when they were traveling in the desert, and now their water supply ran out, and Hagar is traveling with his young child Ishmael, and now he's dying of thirst. It's been 3 days, and they have nothing to drink, and she sits down and she cries and she cries and she prays to God, and then suddenly she opens up her eyes, she wakes up, and she sees a well in front of her. Now, simply speaking, the well was not there before, and now it's there, and the prayers seem to have opened up those blessings. So then you evoke that concept, that even though you couldn't see a way out and you couldn't see a blessing and you couldn't see the salvation coming your way, but you pray and God can open your eyes and the salvation can come your way where you least or it was impossible to expect. And then you evoke Rabbi Meir's name and you give the charity in his name. I want to tell you something. It sounds outlandish. But for anyone who's done it, I know that it works. I cannot explain how or why, but I know that it works. And I want to tell you one story. It happened a few years ago. There's a family who I know very well, and I've been trying to include them in the community. They're a wonderful family, but they're not attached to the Jewish community. And I've been trying to get them, whether it's come to the shul, come to a program. It's been very, very hard. They always have an excuse. They didn't feel like ready to step up and join the community. Once we made a lovely festival program, a party, and to my surprise, I didn't know about this in advance, they came. I was so happy. They came with their young children, and they were having an amazing time. The kids were having a blast. We had wonderful rides and things for them to do, and I was talking to them, and everything was going really, really well. I was so glad this was their first exposure to the community. It was really nice. Suddenly, disaster struck. What happened? One of their young girls, had been wearing a very expensive pair of earrings, golden earrings, which a grandmother bought for them, I believe. very expensive and very sentimental. And as she's jumping on one of the rides or running around the room, the earring fell off. Their first time coming to the synagogue, and now the daughter has lost the earrings that the grandmother bought for her. It was a crisis. And I was very distraught that this is going to be maybe how the evening is going to end. So I put together a few people, my wife, Hani, and I, and a few others, and let's go find it. And we literally searched the room, in and out. I got all the kids to come together. Let's search for this earring. We had one on our other ear, so we showed them what it looks like, and we searched. And we searched on top of the tables and under the tables. We took out garbage bags of bags that had been thrown in the garbage, and we opened them up and went through them. We went onto the rides, we went onto the crafts, onto the stage, outside, on the playground, and the equipment. Wherever you could look, we looked. And a good half hour, 45 minutes later, all the army of searchers came back, empty-handed. We couldn't find the earring. And then I was a little nervous to do this, but I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it because it's real and it's true, and we have to believe in it. I said, come here. I have a charity box, and the charity box is for Rabbi Meir Baal Hanes. We send the funds to poor people in Israel. I said, take out some money, give charity, and you're going to say a few words after me. You're going to say words about Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Meir is still praying for you, and he's going to help you. They looked at me like I was crazy. But why not? I took out a $20 bill from the wallet. I put it in pushka. And I said, say after me, Eloka de Meir Aneni, Eloka de Meir Aneni, Eloka de Meir Aneni. Lord of Meir, save me. Answer my prayers. We did it. And I said, now, let's go look for the earring. I'm not exaggerating. Within 4 minutes, I believe, I looked at my watch after, a child screamed, I found it. And it was the earring. And the earring was literally within 5-6 meters of where we had been sitting the whole time. And we did search there. We searched far, but we also searched near. And we found it. And I don't know if I can say that it wasn't there beforehand. I don't know what the explanation is. I just know that's the story that happened. And I cannot tell you, the evening ended so beautifully because of that story. And I told them the whole story of Rabbi Meir. And it left a great impact on them, and perhaps even a greater impact on me. And it's worked for me also personally. I found my wallet, I found my phone, I found a missing passport. Don't ask. I cannot explain it to you other than we have holy, holy tzaddikim looking out for us. We have holy, holy, righteous tzaddikim who want to dedicate and give their lives for us. Rabbi Meir says, I'm buried standing because I want to pray for those people that need the prayers. Of course, it's not him, it's God. And he's praying to God to answer us. And so with faith in the tzaddikim and with faith in prayer, and after you have exhausted your own efforts, and then you need God's miracle, and you use this formula, that is the way that your prayers will always be answered when you need them to. I hope you'll never have to try it out, because I hope you'll never run into those situations. But if you do, and you try it out, please let me know. I'd love to hear your experience about that. Thank you for learning with us tonight. Oh, you didn't remind me. Why is he called Acher? The final reason why Rabbi Meir is called Acher, why is he referred to as the others, the Acherim, is going back to our story. So remember when he went and he hid in the brothel, and they didn't suspect it's him either because of the finger trick or because of the Elijah being. So they thought it's somebody else. Because of that story, again, he was confused for somebody else. That's another reason why he's called Acher. Gary, thank you very much. God bless you all. Have a good night, and we'll see you next Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. for more outlandish stories and outstanding life lessons. Good night.